something in the way she moves. I could lose myself in the grace of it, but sadly I turned on the news, and the news is Jeff Bezos went to space today. That motherfucker could have paid everyone who ever worked for him a living wage and still been rich enough to buy a rocket ship, but no. So he's an asshole in space. Some days I thank my lucky stars that I never made enough to buy a rocket ship, because people, they are what they are, and I probably would have bought myself that rocket ship. And that motherfucker Jeff Bezos, he'd probably be a folk singer, writing songs about how badly I mistreated my employees, and he'd be right, and I'd be the asshole in space. We should have moved the world before he came back down. We should have moved the world before he came back down. We should have moved the world before he came back down. But we were too busy ordering a tripod. Somewhere there's a better world than this one, and the folk singers are twiddling their thumbs, and all of the friendly tech thousandaires live in trailers and drink Diet Coke and rum. He could have treated every human being who ever worked for him with dignity and still been rich enough to buy a rocket ship, but he didn't. Oh, he's an asshole in space. So there it is, the finely calibrated version of the tune, and it's a satire, and I feel like, you know, the success or failure of a satire is down to really the gross calibration first. You know, I wrote that tune in 20 minutes, I put it up on the internets, and it is the most widely shared thing that I've done in 3, 4, 5 years. And that tells me that I got the gross calibration fairly right, and you know, or fairly effectively. You know, and also the ratio, like I would say 96, 98% of the comments that I saw, you know, as I sort of scroll through them, because I'm an unhealthy person, but also because I'm a process-oriented writer, there's like 97 to 3% laugh out loud, and then 3% kind of irritable, and that's hard. That's, you know, I'm not a big satire guy, but I've written, I would say, maybe a dozen and a half tries at satire, and I've had 3 or 4 that landed there. It's hard to hit that target. We can't all be Randy Newman. I feel like Randy Newman is playing horseshoes. You know, if we're gonna use a calibration metaphor, Randy Newman is playing horseshoes in an Olympic soccer stadium, and he's all the way at the other end of the field like a ninja, just being like, you know. Funny little side note about satire is, it seems to me from the outside as kind of a dilettante, that if you're really good at it, like if you're Randy Newman level good at it, it actually has diminishing returns. Like he wrote I Love LA to sort of really get at some of the icky core of LA, and the Lakers made it their you know, song that they play on the PA. You know, he wrote Short People to talk about racism and othering, and it was widely misinterpreted. But you know, luckily I'm not trying to make or break a whole deal on satire. I just do them occasionally, and I feel like that initial throw, the gross calculation, is mostly down to instinct, because, you know, I write pretty quick. And so I've made some fine calibrations in response to the feedback, and especially the criticism. So I'm going to edge out I'm going to edge out into that criticism and into the calibrations. So a lot of people were really upset and seemed to think that I was angry at Jeff Bezos for going into space. And so I heard that, and rather than just be miffed, I figured I hadn't quite been clear enough. I thought I was fairly clear, but I put the word so. That's the only tweak I made to that first verse. He could have paid everyone that motherfucker could have paid everyone who ever worked for him a living wage and still been rich enough to buy a rocket ship, but he didn't, so he's an asshole in space. The goal here, for reasons that'll become clear in a minute, is to bring people with you into the further work that the satire is going to do. And so if that word so clarifies it in, like, you know, a few ticks of percentage points of listeners and gets them to go with me to the second verse, good, because the work of the song is done in the second verse. The second verse, the rule of thumb is if you're going to throw someone under the bus, get under the bus with them, or you are just being mean. And so I do it pretty quickly with the role reversal, you know. And I feel like, again, I cleaned that way up from the original version to make it absolutely clear what I was saying. And of course, the risk there is that if you make it too clear, you begin to seem academic. I mean, I'm academic here, but that's because we're talking process. In the song, you don't want the academics of it to show, but I feel like that's a pretty good, cleaned up, better second verse, because that's carrying the second heaviest load in the song. And the thing that I'm proudest of, I think I brought into clearer relief, is that I would be now indignant and call that folksinger Jeff Bezos writing about me, the billionaire, I'd still be calling him a motherfucker, right? You know, it's like you're trying to do the work of that Mark Twain thing. You know, when I was 19, my father was so stupid I couldn't stand to be seen around him. And when I was 27, I was astonished at how much the old man had learned in just 8 years. There's a payload that's sort of carrying. Another way to put it is that any parody should have either the word we or the concept we, the first person plural concept, early in it, because you're trying to bring people with you through this sort of thought box and get them to think things, help them to sort of bounce off the walls of the thought box along with you, and hopefully we come to an understanding. And then the bridge of that song is the part I'm most proud of. I'm a little guilty for having stolen it. I didn't think that up. I saw a number of people who were like, hey, let's dress up as apes before, you know, Jeff Bezos gets down, or hey, let's move one or two I saw said, let's move the planet Earth before Jeff Bezos comes back. I thought that's really funny, and I stole the concept, but you'll notice the word we is in there, and it was, you know, that was just a pure instinct move. I was galloping along with that concept, and then that flashed into my head. We should have moved the world before he came back down, but we were too busy ordering a tripod. I'm speaking into an iPhone, and the tripod that it's on, I ordered from Amazon. I don't like to order from Amazon, and I have kind of stopped doing it a while back because of the way the warehouse workers are treated. And then I feel like the most suspect move I made, and I'm interested in both your thoughts here, but also I'm going to be singing it at every show for a while. I'm interested in watching the audience reaction to that last verse, because in the last verse, I introduced a certain directness and earnestness. In the calibrated version, I have now just dropped the word motherfucker and said, and responded to people who pointed out that Amazon does pay $15 an hour, and they have paid $15 an hour since 2018. That is still not a living wage, people. After taxes, that's like $25,000 a year. I suggest you try to go live near an Amazon warehouse on $25,000 a year or less. And also, again, sure, yes, it's positive that he raised a wage, and it drew other people up with him, drew other wages up with that action, and all of that is positive stuff, and it's still possible to criticize it with carefully chosen words, as I did. But in the third verse, I dropped all of that, and I made sort of an earnest statement. He could have, how did I say it? He could have treated every human being who ever worked for him with dignity and still been rich enough to buy a rocket ship. But no, he didn't. So he's an asshole in space. I feel like that's a risky move, because earnestness is, of course, kryptonite to humor. It's why so few of the comments that took umbrage were funny, because they're earnest. They're earnestly pissed off that I've attacked Jeff Bezos. So I want to try to demonstrate everything I just said in a little sort of satiric response to it, which is, I was looking at the people who felt that Jeff Bezos needed someone to defend him against me as a folk singer, and I noticed this common thread, and it jumped out at me, and it really surprised me that almost all of them were middle-aged white men. And then I thought about it for a while, and I realized, like, yeah, actually, I get it. I mean, we middle-aged white men have had a really rough few centuries, and we haven't had a lot of places to look for the hope of maybe being sort of exalted and lauded. And I'm really glad that Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson and Elon Musk and 45 of the 46 American presidents finally came along and gave us, some sort of role models, because it was looking pretty tough for us. So right, again, like, that's a way to hopefully deploy satire. I don't know, I may have lost 3 or 4 fans in the last 30 seconds, but that brings me, I think, to the last thing I want to say about satire. Like, Randy Newman is a master of satire, and then he drops the satire every once in a while to write a song like I Miss You, which is just this killing tune. It's so sad. So he's about 80% tongue-in-cheek, and then once in a while he drops the mask and he speaks to you earnestly in these songs, and they're heartbreaking, Marie, oh my God, how does he do it? And obviously, as a folk singer, I'm kind of an opposite number. Like, I would say 80% of my songs are earnest, and I have to actually deploy devices to sort of tone down the earnestness to suit my bullshit-ometer. But the sort of hopefully the sort of tenderness and general humanity, in my case, serves as a framing device for my occasional satire. Like, most of the people who hear my songs have already heard many of my songs. And so when I write a satire, they also know that I'm often speaking up for complexity, and I'm often speaking up for human dignity and kindness, and so the satire is seen in that context, and you're more likely to get it. I'm not just some asshole. And it's interesting, when a song like this breaks out, it's one of the few times that a person like a working artist like me, when it breaks out and now like 100,000 people have seen it, it's one of the few times a working artist like me gets to get outside of my silo and actually get some bad reaction coming back. And I'm as egotistical as the next person, and it hurts my feelings that they've, taken this song and not listened to it closely enough. Nobody's job is to listen to my songs closely. Like, it just doesn't matter. And so after I get over the initial ruffling of feathers, I do have that instinct to go back and say, well, is there a way that I can write it so clearly that it's easier to listen to it closely? It's easier to get the meaning of it. So hopefully this has shed some light on that, and I really appreciate, as ever, your thoughts and your patronage, and apparently your rancor. It just takes me a little longer to appreciate that. Remember, art is here to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable, and I have often been afflicted and taken comfort in art, and it's been so great. But I have occasionally been comfortable and been afflicted by art, and man, that shit is hard to take. Those afflictors are assholes, and I wish they wouldn't afflict me so much, but maybe it's good for me. All right, see you down the road. Thank you.